So we've lined up a number of exciting sessions this morning. So quickly, my name is Jacob Kalumba. I'm the Senior Manager at PwC's Zambia. And just to make mention that we are also streaming live on our Facebook platforms as well as our PwC's Zambia broadcast platform. So before we go any further, allow me to recognize the presence of dignitaries and guests that we have from different sections of the public. To start with, we have the Auditor General of the Republic of Zambia, Dr. Dick Chembe, in our midst. Allow me also to recognize the presence of Mr. Francis Mbewi, the Deputy Auditor General, Audit. Also joining us this morning is Mr. Chibwe Kulonda, the Controller of Internal Audit at the Ministry of Finance. We are also joined by the Chairperson of the Public Accounts Committee. That's Honorable Warren Mambazi. Moving on, we are also joined by the presence of Dr. Emmanuel Mulenga Pamu from Cabinet Office, the Permanent Secretary. Allow me also to recognize in our midst the presence of Ms. Susanna Hughes from CIDA. She is the Head of Bilateral Development Corporation. Then we have Mr. Marcus Weimar from the British High Commission. Mr. Marcus Weimar is the Governor's Advisor at the British High Commission. And lastly, but not the least, we are also expecting or joined by Mr. Rama Krishnan from the World Bank, and he's the lead governance specialist there. Then also would like to just recognize the presence of all those dignitaries and guests that we have not listed here, but joining us either here or through our live Facebook platform and the webcast. So what do we have today? Just a quick run through our agenda. We are firstly going to have opening remarks to be presented by Charity Mulenga, who is the leader of our government and public sector unit at PwC's Zambia. Shortly after that, we are going to have our keynote address to be done by the Auditor General of the Republic of Zambia, Dr. Dick Chembe. Then after that, we are going to have a presentation run by Lyndon Lempo. Lyndon Lempo is an Associate Director in PwC's Zambia and is in charge of our Risk Assurance Service Unit. Then we are joined by Francis Nzao, who is joining us from Kenya, PwC Kenya. He's going to give some remarks about the Auditor General experience in Kenya. Then lastly, we are going to have a panel discussion to be moderated by Lyndon Lempo. We've lined up a number of interesting panelists with a lot that is prepared for us to listen to. So with that, we're going to then have our closing remarks, and we expect to end the program at exactly about 10:30. So allow me to welcome to the podium for opening remarks. Ms. Charity Mulenga. Thank you.
A very warm welcome to everyone that has joined us here in person, but also the number of guests that have joined us online. As I will write on the protocols that Jacob took us through, so really a very warm welcome to everyone. So Jacob has already introduced me. I know a number of you, some of you I have not yet, and I hope to have a chance to interact with you before the end of our event today. So just a few comments just before we start today. As I said, protocols, I'm writing on the protocols, but just to start in terms of why this event is important. Really, where we're starting from is that the Auditor General, as we are aware, presented the auditor's report, and really in the past there has not been much of an interaction. Yes, we know and have heard about the different meetings that happen at PAC, as well as some interactions with the media. So there are lots of those. But having events like this, where we're able to have a more in-depth opportunity to look at the report, what are the findings. This report is really long. I'm not sure any one of us has got the whole over 300 pages. We've basically taken some snippets. But this chance that we have is to have more of an in-depth understanding of what is in the report, what does that mean, and then to just also have an opportunity to interact and ask some questions. So as I'm saying, it's not about, because there's a process that happens after this part, and the chairman is here, honorable members here. But so it's not about his process. That process must work. It's a constitutional requirement anyway. So it's not about that. Really, it's all about the report is out in the public. We need to just know a little bit more, actually a lot more about what is in that report. So as I said, it's not about the auditors really to respond, but it's about understanding findings. So what are the findings, the key ones, because we're really going to focus on what are the key messages coming out of there, what are the key things to hear about them. And then, as Jacob did mention, that we have an opportunity as well to just kind of do a sense check in terms of what happens in Kenya. So we'll have a chance. And then later on, we'll have a panel discussion and have an opportunity to ask questions. I really encourage every one of you here, as well as those on the online platform, to ask questions. So as I said, we are very much honored to have this event. For some of you, you may not know what our purpose is, but it is to build trust and solve important problems. So for us, it is just an opportunity to do just that. We signed an MOU. This happened in March 2021, and so the MOU, what we're doing here, speaks to that. And we also launched very recently what our new vision is, which is the new equation. And it's all about trust and sustained outcomes. So a lot of what we're going to do today is making sure that we think of how we can help this office to build trust and at the end of the day to have sustained outcomes. And it really comes at the right time. What does it do that? Because we have listened to the budget. So it comes at the right time for me, because what it actually does is then you can see what the Auditor General can actually do, advise as well in terms of what the Auditor General can do, as he in the next couple of years, in this particular year, as well as going forward, how to better have an accountable, efficient, and effective role as a lead. So in terms of here, so he is remember it has a mandate, So what we want to do at the end of the day, and which is why also it is key, as I mentioned earlier, it's about making sure that the time that we spend here is about looking at tomorrow. So we have the budget. The findings have already been brought to our attention. So what is the next step? And when we have the interactions here, I'm hoping then that we keep that in mind. That is about tomorrow. We know, for instance, that the budget has brought on CDS 25.7 billion. That's a lot of money. At the end of the day, it is Auditor General that will look at those funds. So it is really a lot of us here being able to provide our input into his office. And so for us, we're coming from really and engaging with a view of tomorrow. And really, as I mentioned earlier, that our vision is about trust and sustained outcomes. So what we do not want is that a solution, for instance, is for this moment. It must be something that is sustained. And what are our thoughts around that it is sustained and we go on and on, because then there is a change that we are looking for. And why is that important? Because there are several stakeholders here. It's the donors, it's even our citizens. A number of those that have joined us are citizens as well. That is our money. It's the donors' money. So we all have an interest one way or the other. So building trust and having a sustained outcome is critical for all of us, which is why I'm glad to see all of you here and really look forward to a time of interacting where we can give our views and better the future for all of us, including the Auditor General's office. So with that, we'll have about probably up to 10:30, so it's not exactly the next 2 hours, but I look forward to this interaction with yourselves here as well as those online. And with that, I hand back to Jacob. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charity, for that deep dive into our purpose this morning. With that, allow me to call to the podium the Auditor General of the Republic of Zambia, Dr. Dick Chela, to come and give his keynote address. A round of applause.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The chairperson of the Public Accounts Committee, Honorable Warren Mwambazi, the representative of the British High Commission, the representative of the Canadian High Commission, the representative of the Swedish Embassy, representative of the German Embassy, Permanent Secretary, Special Duties at Cabinet Office, Dr. Emmanuel Murengapam, Controller of Internal Audit, Mr. Chibwe Moronda, the Deputy Auditor General in charge of audit, Mr. Francis Bewe, the Deputy Auditor General in charge of corporate services, Mrs. Mazimba, PwC Senior Partner, Mr. Andrew Chibuye, Partner PricewaterhouseCoopers Limited, Mrs. Charity Renga, Directors present the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to grace this important presentation event organized by PwC's event on the report of the Auditor General on the accounts of the Republic for the financial year ended 31st December 2020. Further, I extend my gratitude to you all for finding time to attend this event. This demonstrates management of public resources. It also goes Ladies and gentlemen, the Office of the Auditor General draws its mandate from Article 50 of the Constitution of Zambia, Amendment Act number 2 of 2016. And other stakeholders' assurance on whether public resources are being utilized for the intended purpose in compliance with various applicable laws and whether such resources are being utilized economically, efficiently, and effectively. Ladies and gentlemen, in addition to the requirement of the law, the Office of the Auditor General, in the conduct of audits, also follows international standards of supreme audit institutions, ISI, issued by the International Organization of Supreme Audit Institutions, INTOSAI. One of these standards, which is INTOSAI P2, says value and benefits of a supreme audit institution, making a difference in the lives of citizens. Why do we exist as the Office of the Auditor General? How relevant are we to change the lives of the Zambian citizens? This standard requires us to have a meaningful and effective dialogue with the stakeholders, such as yourselves, on how our work facilitates improvement in the public sector as we discharge our responsibility of being a credible source of independent and objective insight that supports beneficial change in the public sector. I am delighted to note that through this event, the office has an opportunity to fulfill the requirement of INTOSAI P12 of helping improve the public sector performance. Ladies and gentlemen, as you may be aware, government has prioritized prudent management of public resources. His Excellency, the President, Mr. Kainde Hichilema, during the opening of the first session of the 13th National Assembly, directed that prudence should be observed in the management of public resources, especially in the procurement of goods, services, and works, by ensuring that such procurements are done at the right price, with the right quality, and delivered at the right time. This pronouncement is important, especially when one considers the matters contained in the 2020 report of the Auditor General. Ladies and gentlemen, the report of the Auditor General on the accounts of the Republic for the financial year ended 31st December 2020 report highlights significant findings, which include wasteful expenditure, failure to follow procurement guidelines, failure to recover loans and advances, and overpayments, among others. These will be discussed in detail at this event. Such findings are worrisome, given that the nation had to do with meager resources arising from severe restricted fiscal space caused by huge public debt service obligation and the negative effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. Given these conditions, citizens and other stakeholders would rightly expect that the resources left would be applied prudently to ensure that critical social-economic services such as health and education are delivered to citizens effectively. Therefore, it becomes a concern to me as Auditor General looking at the 2020 report that despite such economic difficulties and national needs, some of the people charged with the responsibility of managing resources continue to abuse and mismanage these resources. However, through this forum, I wish to assure the nation that my office will not sit back and watch such abuse go on unchecked. We shall relentlessly and without compromise follow and scrutinize how public resources are raised and how they are applied, and therefore we shall ensure that anyone charged with the management of such resources is held accountable. And we shall expose whoever we shall find abusing public resources and ensure that where required, such people are reported to the law enforcement agencies for possible prosecution. This event is important as it affords relevant stakeholders timely lessons on the pitfalls to avoid in order to prevent audit queries. Ladies and gentlemen, in this regard, at this presentation, we would like to encourage stakeholders to analyze extensively the audit report to identify trend and causes of audit queries and suggest corrective recommendations. As an office, we are eager to engage with you as the 2020 report and other related issues are going to be discussed. This will provide us with the feedback we need to undertake further audit work. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, I would like to again thank you and thank PwC for organizing this event, and I look forward to the fruitful discussion. I thank you. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Auditor General, for that powerful message. I think for me personally, every time I listen to the Auditor General speak, I'm always reminded of the important mandate that the Office of the Auditor General is tasked with. I think all of us are reminded of the fact that whenever we hear the Auditor General speak, we're discussing matters of national importance. So many of us are curious, what then happened last year in terms of the management of public resources? Many of us have not read the report in full. We looked at the summary report and other pieces of information that the Auditor General has provided. So to get a deep dive into that, into the analysis, into what happened last year, I called to the podium Lempo to get us through the presentation. So as a reminder, Lyndon Lempo is an associate director in our PwC office here in London, and he leads the risk assurance services department. Lyndon?
So, good morning, and right in the good place that have already done. Listening to the Auditor General speak with such vigor and such passion, very fearful. If I was a civil servant or offending controlling officer, the passion with which he speaks around holding people accountable for the public fund that they're in charge of, it should strike fear in the hearts of any controlling officers. So with that said, a few comments, a few reminders. I'll have a presentation for the next 20 to 30 minutes, followed by insights from our colleague from PwC Kenya. He'll provide a view as to how accountability and transparency is faring in Kenya. And then we can then compare. But as we go through the presentations to our members that are joining us on our virtual platforms, if you have any questions, please leave them on the virtual platform, whether it's webcast or it's Facebook, and we have a team working in the background. Pick these questions and bring them forward to the panel discussion. So please feel free to ask questions to the members that are with us here today. Similarly, if something pops into your mind, please save the question for later, and we'll have the opportunity during the panel discussion to pose those questions to the various panel members. So what's the general report? It's a very large report, over 300 pages. It takes a lot to get through. What's good to note is in the previous year, there was a summary report that was shared that helped condense that report and perhaps share the key themes in a manner that's made more digestible for the general public. That is something I think we're waiting on in this year. So 322 pages, very large to consume. What are the key issues? And this is what we will be delving in today. So firstly, and above all, is wasteful expenditure. 1.4 billion kwacha was wasted. By far, the most significant issues. Our report will tackle the top 5. There are 14 major themes that the Auditor does touch upon. We will tackle the top 5. And we'll go into detail on the top 5. Failure to follow procurement procedures, 234 million. Non-recovery of loans and advances, the total there is 84 million. Unvouched expenditure, 28 million. Unaccounted for funds, 21 million. So you can quite clearly see wasteful expenditure and failure to follow procurement procedures. By far, those are the biggest issues. And when you hear the AG speak and you reflect upon the fact that we have a government purse that isn't as healthy as it should be, or we would like it to be, when you see 1.4 billion in wasteful expenditure, perhaps it affects you in a negative manner. How does that compare to the previous years? So if you think of some of the trends and the issues we've heard about in the previous years, misapplication of funds was always something that stood out quite strongly. In the current year, it's not even in the top 5. It's slightly lower, sitting around 6 or 7. From the graph, you can see that in 2020, by far, the total value of findings is well in excess of what was reported in the previous year. There is something to be said there. There's one particular finding under wasteful expenditure. It's close to 1.1 million. But even if you take that into account, and you adjust for that, 2020 still has 407 million in findings. So that's still well above the last 2 years. And it calls into question what's happening around public accountability in that space. So what is wasteful expenditure? Simply put, this is expenditure incurred without any benefit derived from government and citizens. Very, very, very simple put. These definitions are quite clearly put within the AG report back. I think the PFM Act is also very clear. Which ministries have the largest findings? The Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Transport and Communications, the Ministry of Health, and General Education. What did we see as the primary issue here? The And delayed payments to contractors to loan obligations results in interest and penalties assessed. Interest and penalties is by far the largest issue in wasteful expenditure. There's one specific issue, it's around $52 million. The government had contracted the construction of some grain sheds, but there was delayed payment, and the contractor then came back and gave the penalties. So you might ask yourselves why? Why is this happening? Right? I think that's some of the things that we'd like to delve into in our panel discussion. You've got a very tight purse. How do you manage that, right? Why do you get into contracts where you haven't got the funding available? I think that is a regulation. The government officer must not engage in a contract third party without authority or approval of the fund. But this is not necessarily happening, and this is what's causing the challenge. So by and large, this one finding is the largest. But it's not the only finding. There's a lot more findings. And just before the meeting, I was referring to the chair of PAC, and he was mentioning the number of matters he sees in this regard as well. There's interest being paid, penalties being levied, and not being paid. Government contracts are set to protect the government, as all contracts, even in our private lives, protect both parties. So most government contracts have a clause that allows the government to levy liquidated damages in the event that the contractor does not make good on their obligations. And similarly, on the other side, if the government does not make good on their obligations, the contractor is allowed to levy interest and penalties. What we're saying, and when you look at the findings, a large number of findings in the Ministry of Finance and Transport, wherever you've got a large construction project going on, that tends to happen. Late payments, whatever reason those are, penalties are levied. But what we don't actually see is liquidated damages being charged. And I think the AG in this report and its findings is very clear on that. And asking that question very clearly, why are liquidated damages not being levied? Right? But interest and penalties are levied, sometimes to more than the initial value of the contract. And then they pay. So when you hear him speak with such passion, you can understand where he's coming from. And I would urge all of us to take some time to read the detail of the report. Another interesting finding, it was 7.7 million worth of insecticides that went expired, not being used. And another nice thing about the AG's report is actually pictures. So you can visualize what's happening. What is this finding actually about? So insecticides bought close to expiry date, although expired, not being used. What happens? You've spent the money, you've paid, the insecticides are there. Are farmers getting the benefits of this expenditure? And these are the questions that the AG is asking. I think all of us should ask. So, what do we think some of the underlying reasons are? I think it's contract management, right? And adherence to regulations. Excessive penalty clauses. Are some of these penalty clauses fair? We may say that all contracts go through the Attorney General, yes. But there's still a question as to whether some of these clauses are perhaps excessive in nature. Poor management of funding. If we know that there are significant implications for lack of payment, or delayed payment, perhaps better control of funding to those projects. But also making sure that people institute or invoke the clauses that are in these contracts to protect the government. That I think is something the AG is quite clear. And also the PAC chair made it very clear. That is something that we will not see happen. There's clauses there to protect the government, but those clauses aren't invoked. Very quickly, how does that compare? Just very graphically, you can see the increase is very significant from previous years. And this, unfortunately, trend is in the wrong direction. Second issue, failure to follow procurement procedures. What is it? That's simply non-compliant with Zambia public procurement procurement guidelines for purchase of goods and services by the government. Which ministries had the most findings? Transport and communications, housing and infrastructure, as well as health. What are some of the examples? The public finance, if I get your examples, the Public Finance Management Act of 2020 is quite clear in terms of what is required. It's actually also very clear in terms of citing what violations are, what offences are. It's very clear. These are offences, right? Very detailed list of what actual offences are, and it provides guidelines around what needs to be done. So one of the key ones there is if you're going to make a derivation to a contract, you need clearance from the Attorney General. Right? These are large contracts. If anyone has a legal background, you will be rather well, or you will appreciate that small change in the contract because of the way the language is structured, even a comma might change the legal interpretation. So it's quite important that the Attorney General does have a view to make sure that this contract still meets requirements and still protects the interests of the government. So there was some significant variation that you noted. There was one specific one, again, $21 million variations passed into a contract without clearance from the AG. Quite a lot of money. I think that accounts for a significant component of that. Another rule is that before you get a contract, like I said, you must seek clearance from the Secretary of Treasury of the availability of funds to fund that particular contract. There was a purchase of a building for which around about 61.6 million, for which there was no clearance received from the ST. I think that one particular transaction, if you look at the report, it's quite a bit around that transaction that the AG was particularly happy with. There's multiple findings around that particular transaction. And single sourcing for material contracts, there are specific rules, which point you can single source and after which you must go to open national bidding. I believe the threshold is around $100,000. There was instances where there were transactions over and above this limit that was single sourced. One other significant instance that the AG highlights in the report where procurement procedures were not followed under the Ministry of Health was 1,500 tricycle ambulances purchased. This is another one of those very long and detailed findings. There's pictures that can show you the condition of these tricycles currently. Challenges there around following guidelines. The requirements for the ZPPA are that you must get an objection, initially that an objection was refused, resubmitted a lower number, it was then provided the actual contract, unfortunately the number well above the no objection was received. So no objection was given to 130 million kwacha, the actual contract 180 million kwacha. And the contract went ahead, tricycles were purchased. Which is failure to follow procurement guidelines. I think what is particularly unfortunate in this incident is that these tricycles have been delivered, but are parked. And again, the AG has provided us pictures, and they're dilapidated. So a lot of money spent, and perhaps not in the manner, and the things that we purchased are not necessarily being used. So again, very quickly, how does that compare to previous years? Quite a significant increase in the value that we see attached to failure to follow procedures. Thirdly, what was the third most significant issue is non-recovery of loans and advances. So this is really failure to recover loans and advances from staff and various entities. Government contracts. Ministries that were largely affected by this, Ministry of Youth and Child Development, Housing and Infrastructure, as well as Tourism and Arts. Here, again, you can quite clearly see, as you go through this report, and I would urge you to spend time with this report. maybe some bedtime reading on a Tuesday night. When the AG is particularly passionate about an issue, it shows in the depth of the number of pages that the issue will then attract. And non-recovery of empowerment schemes is another one of those. So youth empowerment schemes, in their nature, they're there to try and build entrepreneurial spirit. A lot of money is given out. Unfortunately, in the period 2012 to 2020, total amounts dispersed were around about 89 million projects. Amounts recovered to date were under 6 million projects. So dismal performance in terms of recovery, in terms of what was actually meant by these empowerment schemes. It's quite clear, I think, from the report that the intention was to create a revolving fund. But this doesn't seem to be happening. Sorry. My apologies. So that doesn't seem to be happening. And it's quite a lot of detail around these things provided these funds. One also is advance payments made by the government on contracts. The government engages with a material contract happening. One of the typical clauses that an advance payment must be made. In some instances, an advance payment is made, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, the contract doesn't then go forward. It's the controlling officer's duty to then recover those advance payments. There's instances where these advance payments are not recovered. So you made a payment, you're not receiving the service, but you're not making any efforts to recover those funds that you advanced. And again, there's instances of that highlighted. And also, to give further clarity on that, it's usually give a security bond, right? Provide an advance payment. For instances where no security bond was obtained, made an advance payment, no work was done, and you didn't go back and get that. So, quite a bit of a challenge there. So, again, it's an ability to enforce your internal controls and your rules and policies. I was speaking, like I mentioned, I was speaking to the back chair, and when we discussed this particular issue, it's a real shame that he's unfortunate to go back to Parliament right now, is that he mentioned the largest explanation that's given for this is oversight. Is that it was an oversight that we did not recover these funds. And his view was, yes, but we're willing to pay the interest and the penalties. So it's a bit of a challenge. The fourth most significant issue is unlodged expenditure. And when you look at unlodged expenditure, I think before the public finance Act of 2018, this is probably one of those issues that perhaps was usually missed. This one I miss application of funds. But I think the Act of 2018 and some of the various measures that the government has put in place has brought the volume or the value of these funds slightly down. So where does it arise? It arises due to unavailability of payment vouchers and inadequate support expenditure. So AG and his team got to a ministry, local government authority, there's expenditure made, they ask for evidence, that evidence is just not available. Just not provided in the manner that they would like it to be provided. Ministries that are most affected, Ministry of Finance, General Education, as well as tourism and arts. Like I said, missing source documents, invoices, orders, lack of support for personal money payments. So payments are made to individuals, whether it be invoices, salaries, or advances, and there isn't sufficient documentation to support those payments. So within this finding, there was there were two very large instances. So 25 million of the 28 is attributable to two payments. Dismantling arrears, there isn't sufficient detail to explain the nature and support transaction. There were others, and a lot of them around, but obviously much smaller, around staff members traveling out for various reasons, meetings, but there isn't sufficient documentation to support that experience. The fifth most significant issue, unaccounted for funds. This arose due to unavailability and missing funds which could not be traced to source, primary accounting records, such as bank accounts and expenditure records. Here, again, a significant one of those funds in defense, other ministries of community development and social services, as well as livestock. In terms of some of the findings, there was one that accounted for a large value, about 20 million, about 21 payments made for clearance and transportation, some equipment, but there was no documentation to support it. And there's a few others where funds are reported in the ledger, but there's no documentation to see where exactly those funds are. So when we then reflect on these findings, and like I said, those are just the top five findings. They've changed in terms of reflection over the years. What issues are most significant? But what do we see as the root cause behind these issues? One is governance. So in terms of transparency in the governance process, work ethic, performance management systems not being as effective as they should be. Our officers of the public that are offending actually acted upon. So the Public Finance Management Act 2018 is very clear in terms of the measures that can be taken on offending officers. But it's not always happening. And that perhaps is not clear. Accountability, like I mentioned, failure to account for and provide required information. So that speaks to document management as well. Right? Strength of the system that are in place. If this is that being rolled out and implemented as well as it should. Fiduciary duties, circumvention and collusion. I think we can't run away from that. It's not always clear. I think those are the kind of things that Western Germany is keen upon. You heard him speak about with a lot of passion, as well as the practice. The weak supporting IT systems and platforms, business, EGP, which is the e-procurement module, has that been rolled out as far as it should be? It's not fully utilized. There's still a number of sites that are not using it. For example, business and e-procurement are not integrated. Itself has some challenges. The budgetary module is not yet fully implemented within business. So that does pose a challenge on the revenue side. Budgets needed, differences in what has been improved. So strengthening those systems, I think, will be very key in improving public accountability going forward. Some of the measures, I'll go through this very quickly. What are some of the things the AG is doing? I think the scope has been extended to value for money audits and specialized audits across the government. There's training of auditors and strengthening internal control systems, building capacity. Like Chaiti mentioned, we have people with the AG to help support them and build capacity. And that is one of those initiatives taken. IPSAS, new accounting framework for accounting. There's moves to adopt IPSAS in the public space, and I think that is progressively ensued. Regulation-wise, legislation-wise, there has been moves to improve those, enhance. We've seen public finance movement of 2018 come into place, and progressively we can see the impact of that. Treasury single account, that has been operationalized. There are still 3 out of 62 audited as of July, there were 3 sites out of the total 62 that are still not on the Treasury Statement. But I think it is a very strong implementation throughout 62. It's quite strong. Strong institutions, I think that is important in terms of improving accountabilities. APPA talks about reviewing the Public Procurement Act and changing procedures to make them more effective and value-driven. In terms of lowering costs, I think we've heard various members of the government speak around the need to lower costs around public procurement, whether it be roles or ancillary matters that appear on a day-to-day basis. I think that is something that is being targeted. So, from me, that's really it. That's really my last slide. And I'd like to thank the AG for its most detailed report. We'll have a chance to interact during the panel discussion and share what other thoughts we have. There's only so much presentation. So for now, I'll hand over to Francis, who will give us a reflection of what the Kenyan landscape does look like. So thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. Happy to interact with you guys. My name is Francis. I'm Associate Director at PwC Kenya. So I'm here in addition to discussing what is happening on the other side of the east Kenya, also to learn, also understand what is going on here in Zambia. I'm happy to hear the previous presentations where most of the issues being discussed here actually are starting or comparing what we have on the side of Kenya. So quickly, I will just take us through 5 points, basically on a high level, was really for us to appreciate the environment for Kenya and the kind of findings the Auditor General of Kenya is seeing in the country. So I will quickly comment about the constitutional mandate for Kenya, then the regulatory requirements on reporting for the public sector entities in the country, then an overview of the top cross-cutting findings from the audit of financial year 1920, which has been completed for a number of entities, but for some entities it's still ongoing. Then a few of the changes or what's happening in the office of the Auditor General in terms of really implementing these issues and communicating these issues to the relevant institutions, and the name of what can be done to close this issue of visa. Then lastly, I will take us through a trend of audit opinions. This may be a bit technical in terms of understanding the opinions. And for us who are here, I will also give a brief meaning of what the opinions are and the categorization of the various audit opinions that the audit office of the Auditor General issues. Yeah, so for our case, and as the OAG has said for Zambia, again, in the Kenyan side, the office of the Auditor General also draws their mandate from the Constitution of Kenya, specifically for us in the Article 279, where the establishment of the office is stated, and then the mandate of the same office. So basically, it's to audit and report on the financial accounts or financial statements of all the public sector entities, and above that, also to report on the use and the management of public finances or resources by the public sector entities. Again, is also the Public Audit Act of 2015, specifies the various types of audits that the OAG in Kenya undertakes for the public sector entities. And just briefly, we have financial audits, which is basically the examination of the financial statements or the accounts, basically verify the numbers to confirm whether they have been presented in line with the applicable reporting framework. But there's also an element of performance audits to go beyond the financial statements, basically to evaluate the economy, the efficiency, and the effectiveness with which the public resources have been utilized. just about the numbers to see whether the actual work, the actual projects, the delivery of that is happening on the ground. Then the special audits, which are on a need by need basis, for example, forensic or investigation, which will happen if the Office of the Auditor General oversees audits and observation of any fraudulent activities within any of the public sector entities. Procurement audits is part of the internal control, so just to confirm whether the procurement of goods and services is being undertaken in accordance with the applicable law, which for activities the public procurement and the Access Disposal Act of 2015. Then periodic audits, I mean, for either prevention or where issues are being detected, more of on a need by need case. Yeah. So when we come to the statutory reporting requirements, so all the public sector entities in Kenya, our financial year end is June 20, June, or the financial year runs from July to June. So after the year end, the Office of the Auditor General is supposed to do the audit in a period of 6 months, so that by December of the calendar year, all the audit reports have been issued to the public and the respective entities. And for us, there are 3 categories of public sector entities in Kenya. It's like a number of them, but broadly into 3 categories. So we talk of the national government ministries, departments, and agencies. So these are the mainstream ministries, and in count they are around 70 in terms of what. But then we also talk about subsidiary entities, any other subsidiary entities, either established by those ministries by maybe Act of Parliament, or even other projects. They are development projects funded by different development partners and implemented by those ministries. Those are also audited as part of that lot or category of entities. Those are around over 350 of the entities in terms of count, but they keep on increasing day by day as new projects come on board or other entities are formed. Then the second category is the state corporations, which basically we call the normal parastatals, but this is a wider category which covers the state corporations and other government agencies in others. But again, those also they are subsidiary entities. They are also development projects or funds, public funds established by the government. And in county, we have over 500 entities. Then lastly, we have the county government entities. I've had one conversation about what is happening in terms of decentralization. For us, it's a revolution. This is from the constitution of 2010, and then the county government are formed around 2013. So again, it's another set of government entities which the Office of the Auditor General does their audit on. In county, we have 350 entities, but the mainstream counties, we have 47 counties in Kenya. And then you find that in terms of reporting, each county government will have a county executive and the county assembly. So in total, we have 94 main county government entities. But then you find other subsidiary entities either formed by the county government, like it's state corporations and the county, or funds, or again, donor funded projects and so on. So in total, we have over 350 entities. So really, you can see the huge task that OAT Kenya has to audit almost over 1,000 entities within a duration of 6 months. And so what happens is that at the end of the audit, then the OAT will prepare a consolidated report for each category. Like for now, for the financial year 1920, the report that has been published is for the first category for the ministries, departments, and agencies. Then as time goes by, we'll be seeing the other category for the sagas and then the county government. Yeah, so I will briefly again go through the issues that we found cutting across all the entities, and you'll see that a number of these actually compare with what has been presented, maybe by use of different wording, but really the content or the concept is the same. So inaccuracy in the financial statements. So as part of the audit of the financial accounts, the audit has found that there are a number of variances or explain differences between what are presented in the financial statements and the underlying supporting documentation or underlying what we call the general ledger or listings. And again, also you find variances which are not explained and there are no other supporting documentation around the financial accounts. So this is basically looking at the numbers, and when the then auditor goes deeper to now demand for more support on what those numbers present, then you find that the entity being audited is not able to provide Audit expenditure, I've had wasteful expenditure in the terminology for Zambia. It's similar or related, and this is where we talk of either expenditure not being able, it's not supported, or the supporting documentation doesn't add up to what has been presented in the financial statements. Again, you'll be spending over and above what has been budgeted for, and there is no explanation as to why the entity exceeded what was the approved budget. Yeah. So basically, any expenditure reported in the financial statement for which the auditee or the entity is not able to substantiate or validate by use of supporting documentation reviewable by the auditor. Number 3 is the non-compliance with applicable procurement laws and regulations. Similar, we had a similar issue for procurement. Sorry. So as I mentioned, for Kenya, the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act of 2015 applies, and so here you find it's where and it's a whole process from the requisition all the way up to delivery and then payment. And so you find the auditor or the entity or the accounting officer is not able to follow the process of either through documentation or to show how competitive procurement has been applied in compliance with the Act, then it flags an issue. So all evaluation will best be done in each category of procurement. Lack of value for money is now where the auditor goes beyond. I had a new what the OAT wanted to extend the audit into value for money audit. So from the performance audits, you find that the kind of deliveries of projects of don't meet the standards for which they were intended to achieve the objectives of the citizenship. For assets management, again, it's more of internal controls around the management of assets. Be it record keeping to show what the entity has in place through assets register or the control and use of those assets, or maybe for government, the various laws on use of assets apply. So if any of those have not been met, then it becomes an issue, and these are cutting across all the 3 categories of entities that I mentioned. Impress management, again, I also heard about it from the presentation for Zambia. So this is where either impress are being given or advances are being given to staff in implementation of activities without the necessary required approvals, or once an impress has been issued, then accounting back is not either done on time or is not done at all. Yeah. So again, it brings an issue on whether the advances have been used in accordance with what was intended to be done. Lastly, is now the issue of resolving audit issues. Because here you find that the same issues from year 1 go to year 2, year 3. So when the auditor does the audit for Kenya, there is usually a requirement for the entity to append the status of implementation of prior audit findings. So you find that if you do a trend analysis, then the same issues that were found in year 1 will go to year 2, year 3, and so on. So, but then again, I had the mention of PAC. Even on our case, we have the same Public Accounts Committee and also the Parliamentary Audit Committee, which also is helpful in putting into account the accounting officers of the various entities in terms of addressing those issues. So basically, these are the top 7 I gathered from the published reports, and these cut across all the 3 categories of entities. And as you can see, they almost mirror to what we had for Zambia, which means that it could be the same issue for our African countries, but the good thing is that we are here to share and see what can be done better to address these issues going forward. What is happening at the office of the Auditor General in Kenya? And really, this is to show the efforts that OAT is putting in place to ensure that either there is efficiency in executing these audits, or the audits are being done in accordance with the required standards, and then also on a timely basis to give the entities an opportunity to implement the recommendations from those audits and to respond to audit queries, to close audit issues, and then we see improvement going across. So the first thing is independence, because it's an independent office, free from any being asked or being affected by the other public sector entities or the government and so on. So it draws this independence from the Constitution of Kenya of 2010, and so then it means then that the Office of the Auditor General is able to carry out their audit without interference from the other public stakeholders or players. What the Office of the Auditor General also has done is to decentralize their office. Initially, it used to be just the head office in Nairobi being rolled out to carry out audits from all the regions, all the counties in the country. But now we've seen formation of 11 regional offices across the whole country, which means then like the county governments which are involved, which are decentralized, the offices from those regions are able to easily undertake the audits from their locations. And so this then will speed up the audit process so that then the entity will have the sufficient time to implement the audit issues or recommendations. 3-year audit allocation, I think it's with the concept of interest or independence of the audit firms. Initially, an audit firm will be given a term of 3 years, but possible extension for 2 years. But now it's mandatory 3 years. After the 3 years, then there's a rotation for a new audit firm. And this is for the delegated audit money. So what this means is that where the office of the OAG delegates the audit to another private audit firm or another audit firm, and this happens more on the second category for the parastatals or the sagas, then now we are seeing the OAG being involved intensely in the process, either through enhancing the terms of reference to ensure that the audits don't only look at the numbers to check that they are complying with the standards, IFRS for this case, but also the efficiency part of it and the effective use of the public resources. Then also automation, we see the Office of the Auditor General in Kenya doing automation of the audit process through acquisition of audit software, which then brings efficiency into the whole audit process. And then also tracking of the audit issues, involving the public to ensure that then the public will see the confidence in this office, so that then we don't see that all those issues are influenced, or the resolution of the issues are being influenced by the auditees, which then comes from the independence of the office. And lastly, then increased performance audits. Yes, it's one of them. Previously, we've not been seeing many of these, but now it's an effort being taken by the current OAG to ensure that then these are increased to go further and deeper beyond the verification of the financial statements. Yeah, so that is it in terms of what is happening with the OAG in Kenya. Let me take us through what I was talking about, the audit opinion. So basically the audit opinion is a view of the auditor on the financial statements presented. And we talk of 4 types of audit opinions. One is an unqualified audit opinion, which is basically in simple terms a clean opinion, where the auditor says he's happy with the financial statements, they meet the required standards, and there are no issues. That's a clean opinion. But then we come to qualified opinion, where it says, okay, generally I'm happy with the presentation of the numbers, but there are 1 or 2, 3 things which you need to look at, so that next time then we can progress to the next category. Then adverse opinion, if I say I look at the account, the numbers, and they don't add up. Basically, I don't agree with how you have presented your numbers, how you supported your numbers. So it's a worse than the previous one. Then the fourth and the last is a disclaimer. This is now the worst, because the auditor is saying I can't actually express my view on the numbers. You know, there are 2 bad sides that I can't even see whether they are good or they are bad. So those are the 4 types of the audit opinion. And this slide shows us for the first category of entities, which is the MPS, the ministries, departments, and agencies. And we've done a trend for the last 5 years. And what you're seeing is that basically the unqualified, or which is the clean opinions, they are increasing, meaning that there's an improvement here on here across the 5 years. The same way then we see the worst opinions, the adverse and the disclaimers going down and reducing here on here. This is for the first category, which have been in existence for quite a long time. You will see a different view for the county government, which have just been in existence for like 9 to 10 years since their establishment. So what we are seeing with the course of these improvements, of course, for the government of Kenya, we use what the IFMIS accounting system, integrated financial management and information system. So the increased use of this IFMIS helps clean up the numbers, tie up the support documentation, and then this can be then a reason as to why we see this improvement. Because for us, it's increased use of IFMIS for the ministries, which have been in existence as compared to other county government entities. also the skill set of the staff, the accounting staff, and the various entities, because of what you have really trained by various efforts, by either the National Treasury or the what we call the Public Sector Accounting and Standards Board, PSSB, then that continues to increase the skills and the competencies of our staff, and then that would be a cause for this increased improvement here on here. Then, and in a snapshot for the county governments, so this, we have, as I mentioned earlier, the county executives or the county assemblies. So here we see a different view. Yes, this reduction in terms of past opinions, either the advance or disclaimer, but then it's a bit slow, perhaps a bit slower as compared to the previous category of entities. So I think this will be happening on use of the entities, and we can have this either through staff compared to the system or commission and available, and nobody's at the entities, like assets or they are growing the establishment compared to the other category of entities. And so this is where we are seeing, basically you see the disclaimers being higher at the start, but then going down and gradually across the years. And then of course then, if they move from disclaimer either to advanced or to qualified or to unqualified, so the other categories then are varying across the chart or the trend. So it's really a lot to be done on the county government part on devolution. Again, a comment that is also example we go to decentralization, something to be keen on, because then you're going to maybe entities which are new to establish systems, structures, and be able then to account for public resources in the required manner. For us, in Kenya, there's no capacity building to the National Treasury. So actually what the National Treasury has done is to establish a unit to support these entities. And here they will do visits to the various entities to analyze the issues being raised and the root causes, and then propose what can be done to close those issues or findings. So again, it will be a point to note as we then support these entities grow from their current level to another level. Because once funds have been disbursed to the counties, then it's upon the governor, the accounting officer, to now control the use of those funds. And it's only until the auditor comes go to the ground, then you can tell what has happened on the ground. Then I think that is it in terms of what we are seeing in Kenya, a very high level, but I think we are seeing some messages cutting across the two countries. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Francis, for that powerful presentation. I think what has caught my attention is that it's interesting to see some similar trends, I think, in both countries between Zambia and Kenya in terms of the findings that are coming out. And I believe by now questions must be brewing from the audience, and indeed the viewers are joining us from various parts of the country. So lastly, on our program, we are moving on to the last portion, which is the panel discussion to be moderated by and where most of the questions that have been asked already, channels to us will be presented. And of course, the audience is free to channel through their questions. With that, allow me to go to the podium and to present the panel discussion. Anyone, please?
Thank you very much, Jay. I'm just being informed we're cutting for a break on the TV stream, so we'll be back with you shortly. Thank you. So while we're on the break on the TV platform, I'd like to introduce our panel. I'll kindly ask them to join us on the stage at the moment. So it's trying to make a partner who looks after government and public sectors. We've got the Deputy Auditor General in charge of audits, Mr. Francis Mbere. Nalusha Siva. This is Nalusha Siva, the country director of Action Aid. Jimmy Maniseni from the Alliance for Community Action. Ms. Nora Sichilongo, Director of Specialized Audits from Internal Audit for Ministry of Finance. Thank you and welcome back to our presentation today. With us in studio for our discussion is I'll introduce our panelists from left to right. Ms. Nora Sichilongo, who is the Director of Specialized Audits in Internal Audit from the Ministry of Finance. Mr. Jimmy Maniseni from Alliance for Community Action. Mrs. Nalusha Siva, the Country Director of Action Aid. Mrs. Charity Member of the Party, in PwC, and looks after our government and public sector. And Mr. Francis Mbere is the Deputy Auditor General in charge of audit. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. To all our viewers on our various platforms, again, if you've got any questions, please feel free to leave them whether on the webcast platform or on the Facebook page. We have a team working in the background that will bring those questions to my attention and then pose them to the panelists. So, perhaps you'll allow me to start with you, Mr. Mbere. As I said, some of myself, some of my Francis. And when we interact and we read the Auditor General's report, there's a question around the function of the Auditor General and the ability to accomplish the audit duties. So you have a kind of debate here. To what extent are you able to achieve your audit plan? And if not, what are some of the challenges you face?
Thank you very much. Maybe to start with, allow me also just to thank the organizer of this meeting. I think it's really worth it, mostly for us who are on the ground auditing. It really motivates us. So we look forward to having more of this kind of interactions. Listening also from our colleague from Kenya, also immediately we are able to see areas that perhaps we need to work on, and areas that we think ultimately this will be so in terms of the audit itself, every year we have a plan to execute the mandate of the Auditor General, audit institutions. So you ask the question, to what extent do we succeed in achieving that plan? The question is yes or no. In terms of coverage at institutional level, as much as possible, I think we achieve 100%. But the challenge becomes, it's inside. When you are auditing the institution, let's say Ministry of Health. You know that Ministry of Health is everywhere. So it's the coverage of the institution. How many hospitals, for instance, do you do in the area? How many clinics? How many training nursing colleges do you do? So that's where the challenge is. You may find that we sometimes go up to 80%, sometimes 85% in terms of coverage of the sample within the institution. So there are a lot of challenges that lead to that. One of the most recent ones is just the COVID-19. I think it's really affected us so much. We are hoping that quickly we can get through this COVID-19. But we also have other traditional challenges like inadequate staffing. We also have challenges in terms of ICT equipment, inadequate ICT equipment, just like also the motor vehicle fleet is a challenge. You know that Zambia is everywhere. The institutions of government are everywhere. We have created a number of districts over the past 10 years or so. So to reach those remote areas, sometimes that's a challenge. Of course, we want to appreciate what government has done so far. The child government is 50%. Motor vehicle ICT, just like also the government of unit has also done to ensure that where there are gaps, we are supported. So do we get what we want in terms of coverage, in terms of the university? We can say we have tried what we can, but we are not happy. We are still not happy. We want to go beyond the 80% that are just. So in short, I think that's the explanation.
Thank you very much, sir. And maybe let me bring in Charity at this point. PwC has mentioned some challenges, COVID-19, and we also experience that in our day-to-day. What perhaps do you think are some of the opportunities for officials that you might be able to share that can help mitigate or help the aging deal with these challenges?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things that would probably help, and we're aware as we've been interacting with AG's office that there is an effort to go down that avenue, is automating. Once you actually have a system, and even the auditees actually have a system, it's easier. You do not have to travel the whole way to get to the auditee. So there's a lot more that one can gain from automation. And as I said, I'm aware that there is that intention to rely a lot more on automation. Because, I mean, I'll give an example for ourselves, where we have an audit software, but we also have a software where we are able to get support documentation that is uploaded. Obviously, because of the risk of fraud and all, we do have extra precautions that we put, but it's actually a start. And given the challenges that they actually have, so we talked about transportation. COVID, we don't know when COVID is going to go away, so it may be a situation where you will not be able to get your coverage as quickly as you would want, and therefore prioritizing automation is I think key to get to where to start to get to where the office wants to. But also, as I said, automation is not the has certain risks, which is why I did say that, like from our perspective, we put in additional safeguards to just make sure that even when it did not go to Shanghai, for instance, because yes, they're able to upload, but what other risk measures do you put into place to make sure that they're actually doing original documents? So, for instance, some of these is that someone actually using a video call, they get as simple as that. They actually put in front of you this document. So you're not, it's what I understand, but you are standing so that actually does help. So yeah, to my mind, automation is a great place to start. Thanks.
Thanks, Chanti. Just to reflect on that, automation within the Office of Auditor, but also I think government in general. Government in general does automate, it does allow for continuous auditing. That's key.
Internal audits. How do the issues that you see in the agent report compare to what you see as the third line?
Yes. Thank you very much.